I should go see if this person was on the 30 under 30 list, because the Venn diagram of founders committing fraud and the people on that list is often just a complete circle. So hold on one second. Holy moly, yes, this person was on the 30 under 30 list. Okay, moving on. This is the Circle Back Club, a podcast for white-collar workers who are finding their way through some truly messy times. I'm Aparna Rae, and this is another bonus summer episode. Last week, some of you reached out to me to let me know that you have been missing Lara's voice. I miss them too and look forward to having them back soon. This week, I've been chewing on an idea, and let me say it plainly. When hard evidence rubs up against the goals of people in power, evidence typically loses. Here's what I mean and what I think we might be able to do about it. Let me start with an example. So I think we tend to see it in how organizations handle the policies and practices that govern their own people. When engagement data tells a story that senior leaders don't want to hear, they bury it and cherry pick the parts that flatter them. I once worked with a CHRO in healthcare who cherry-picked data to write goals that protected senior executives' bonuses. Maybe 150 people out of the 3,000 people who worked at that organization. And she did the cherry picking at the cost of overlooking some truly harmful practices that the organization was engaged in. She also thought negatively worded survey questions sort of had a bad vibe, and after a particularly bad round of survey results was promoted. To be honest, I remain in disbelief that she remains at her post while so many of the very smart people that worked under her have moved on, or perhaps been forced to move on. I think about a retail client where more than 80% of the workforce lived at or below the poverty line. And we're not talking about a handful of people, we're talking about thousands of people. And the data about worker well-being and the need to raise pay always got dismissed. The CEO once spent more decorating his office than the average employee made in an entire month. They also often dismissed a clear and tactical request for safety gear. One particularly rough winter, and I will never forget this, because the workers were asking for warmer clothing because the warehouses were not adequately heated. And that request was just denied outright. Honestly, I think they would have seen probably a 10-point increase in their employee engagement survey if they had just bought people a nice pair of warm gloves. Or take the vitality score, ranking employees against each other, also called stack ranking. There's no evidence that it actually works. In fact, the evidence points the opposite way, and yet the gospel of stack ranking gets preached and practiced anyways. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to go back to our season 1 episode with Dr. Nicole Decay. She has a lot to say about the vitality curve. And now AI is in the mix. We know that data centers, for instance, are driving up the cost of living, especially in rural areas. We also know the harm they cause to our planet. I saw that a developer is trying to convert the inside of the Starbucks headquarters here in Seattle into, you guessed it, a data center. So much for a beloved coffee brand that was once seen as a leader on good people practices. We also know that using AI without skill or nuance does something to our cognition, and that handing still forming brains a shortcut for every task makes them less sharp, not more. Kids today are reading fewer full-length books. College students are turning AI-generated work that doesn't hold together, like it doesn't make sense. And still, billionaires are pouring money into edtech companies and pushing it into schools. All of the evidence points to the very simple fact that we need to regulate kids' access to AI. And yeah, I know they'll find a way to access AI the way that they've been able to get onto social media and hack their parents' phones. But what I'm talking about is the AI that's being willfully integrated in K-12 and in higher education. Here's ultimately what I'm sort of mulching on. When evidence rubs up against the goals of the people in power, the evidence loses. But the oligarchs and the uber wealthy in power are not the only ones to blame. Yes, they are driving the agenda. They are chasing short-term profit, even if it means that the next generation doesn't have access to clean drinking water. But the people around them make it possible. I mean, can we say our elected officials? And they do that by staying silent when they disagree with what's happening or through outright complicity. You see it with the city councils and the school boards that have let edtech companies over the past decade drain budgets without creating any positive learning outcomes. You might have even seen the headlines about the LA school district buying the Ed AI chatbot from All Here, which collapsed after the district had spent millions of dollars on it. Now, I also know that a few $1,000,000 is not such a large sum of money when you consider the size of the LA school district, but it's money that could have been spent on tangibles like school supplies or for paraeducators. Here's the thing. The founder of this edtech company was indicted and arrested by federal prosecutors for orchestrating a nearly $10 million investor fraud scheme. I mean, you guys, I think that I should go see if this person was on the 30 under 30 list, because the Venn diagram of founders committing fraud and the people on that list is often just a complete circle. So hold on one second. Holy moly. Yes, this person was on the 30 under 30 list. Okay, moving on. We can play the game of silent or complicit also with people analytics folks who are too afraid to pull the alarm when they're asked to soften the findings that make leaders look bad. And that's often the whole point of the apparatus of HR, which when you look at it closely was actually built to manage risk for employers, not protect the people who work there. And this is also true in the social sector, in philanthropy, nonprofits, international NGOs. We often call it people operations, but the job is to keep the institution safe, and the people are the variable that are being managed. It's these big and small acts of compliance that make a lot of the brazen extraction possible. I say it often, and I will say it again. No billionaire can pull off theft in broad daylight without the help of everyday people who want to be a little bit more like him or her. Changing course from this way of being takes some courage. It takes people who will stand on the side of evidence and call a thing, consistently and continuously. In my own work, I'm really grateful for friends who double click when they see a clickbaity headline, like the ones linking diversity to higher profits. Here's the part that people don't say out loud. The most cited studies on this, McKinsey's, which often gets promoted, only ever claimed a correlation, and McKinsey itself said so in the fine print. When two independent researchers, Jeremiah Green and John Hand, tried to replicate the finding, they couldn't even reproduce the correlation in S&P 500 company data. And they pointed out that McKinsey had the arrow backwards. Strong financial performance may be what lets a company invest in diversity, not the other way around. So to be precise and honest, no study has ever established that diversity causes profitability. The famous ones, they claimed correlation, and that correlation couldn't even be replicated by scientists. And yet, people will shout that mistruth from the rooftops to build credibility with the very organizations that seem hell-bent on harming people and the planet. Now, I say all of this, and I don't want your takeaway to be that we shouldn't invest in all variety of diversity inside of our organizations. We absolutely should, because some of our smartest, most innovative thinkers are women, people of color, queer folks that have been underestimated, marginalized for a very long time. And I also just want to go on a side quest and say that we should invest in diversity, even if non-white, non-straight people are not the most brilliant. Because here's the thing, everybody deserves to have a dignified way of earning a living. So let's hire people, let's take good care of them regardless. Okay, back on track. It takes courage to say the true right thing instead of being complicit or staying silent. There's a woman by the name of Sarah Wynne Williams who did exactly this. She's a former Facebook policy director whose memoir, Careless People, laid out what she saw inside the company, and Meta ran an arbitrator to silence her. The title alone says everything. Her book is amazing. Please go out and buy it. Careless people in power, ignoring what is right in front of them, are creating all kinds of harms. Sadly, when you're the only or one of the very few people who are willing to do this, who are willing to speak the truth, you have to go live in hiding. Because you're going to get bullied by the corporations, as Sarah is having to do, especially when you are loudly announcing their misdeeds to the public. But not all truth tellers need to go into hiding. I think in this moment, I feel really encouraged by teachers and parents, even though the school year has ended in most parts of the country. They're sounding the alarm on AI and technology at large in classrooms. Or I feel always so encouraged when people are talking openly about burnout and certain demographics of workers that are being pushed out of the workforce. Here's another side quest story. And, to be honest, I really should have scripted this better. But since it's in my outline, I'm going to talk about it. So yesterday I was talking with somebody who said that nonprofit workers are really frustrated with consultants because they think consultants are doing really well. I imagine really well financially. And so I raised an eyebrow because anecdotally, all of the consultants in my life are not doing super well. Almost everybody I know has lost a big chunk of their business. This includes solopreneurs. This includes people that had small consulting firms or even mid-sized consulting practices. Ijeoma Olu has very openly and publicly spoken about losing nearly 75% of her work and revenue over the past couple of years. Spend 10 minutes on a subreddit with solopreneurs and you'll see what I'm talking about. And of course, maybe this is a topic for another day. There are lots of vulture behaviors as well from people trying to sell services and courses to solopreneurs, trying to convince them that they too can become millionaires, which I think is so wrong and actually impossible. Anyways, this person's evidence that consultants are thriving, it's the rise in solopreneurship. Ma'am, I wanted to say to her, filing for a business license is not evidence of income. By that logic, Black and brown women in the United States would be among the most financially secure people in the country because they start businesses at higher rates than any other group. Starting a business and making a living from it are not the same thing. And I'll name myself in this. I've been a consultant too. It would be easy for me to reach for the flattering but misleading numbers. But tragically, for my bank account, the first piece that I actually ever wrote in my Forbes column was about walking away from $2 million in contracts. The discipline is in not doing certain things. It's not enough for us to use data. Fidelity matters too. Truth matters also. Accurate representation, that also matters. The number has to be real, and it has to mean what you say it means. So here's one thing I would love for you to walk out of this conversation with. Double click. When a stat, when a bit of evidence flatters power a little too neatly, that's exactly the moment for you to ask where it came from, what it actually measured, and which direction the arrow points. Call a thing consistently and continuously, and don't let the people who are already doing this in your life, in your work, be the only ones to be doing it. So that's the bonus episode for this week. If this resonated, please follow, like, share the Circle Back Club so you don't miss the next episode, and send it to a data lover in your life. Thank you for spending 15 minutes with me this week. Until next time, I'm grateful you're here, and I'll be circling back before you know it.